Morning. It's the morning of Maker Central, Friday. I'm just about to get myself organised. It's a really weird kind of backloaded day, this one, because we can't... we've got an arrival time of 6 p.m, so I'm not going to leave until after lunch. I'm kind of, itching to get started now, really. But there we are. It is what it is. So I'm going to head up after lunch and check into the hotel about 5ish. Drop my bags off and then go over to NEC where we can get the stand set up, and hopefully I'll meet Andy either at the hotel or along the way, or hopefully in the hall. But I've got all my stuff organised here. I've decided to take everything in sustainers. There are no trolleys or anything available at the NEC, I've discovered by reading through the bump. So at least in sustainers, they're all on roll boards. I can just wheel stuff in, and I've got the tables set up and painted down here, and I've got the stands and the banners and everything sort of to take with me. So I definitely need to take the van. The van's never done a journey of more than about 60 miles, so fingers crossed it'll be all right. I'll take it slow and steady.
Can't believe that day's arrived already. Maker Central Day. Right, I've got the truck kind of half packed at the minute, ready to rock. Right, that ear candy crate is going to have to come out and go in the back. I'm going to put tools in the back, I think. Because the trouble is, when you're going on a long journey like this, the last thing you want to do is realise that you've forgotten something. I've got my plugs, as in wall plugs. I don't know why I would need wall plugs, but I've got loads of washers and things in there that might be handy. I've got a big box of screws, machine screws, drill bits, and the weather's actually improved a bit as well, which is nice. I've got kind of the fragile stuffs going into my back seat of the truck, and then all the tools and rough stuff's just going in the main truck bit.
So yeah, last few bits and pieces, I realised I needed like an iPad or phone stand to rest my cash register till on, and I realised I made some a while back for a gift idea, so I'm going to chop a few of those up. And I've got a few bits and pieces. I was taking the tray, one of the little wooden trays that I made down here. I thought I was going to keep that just to keep labels and stickers and stuff in. I thought it might be interesting for folks to see that as well in the flesh. So I might take I've got a few of the other little bits and pieces for the gift ideas, videos, and knocking around the clock, and a few bits and pieces as well, the coasters and things. So I'll take some of those along, and we'll see how things go. The other thing we've got to do is Andy and I are recording a podcast on Saturday night. Normally we'd be recording it this morning. So we're going to record on Saturday night, and no pressure. And I realise I need to run around and get a couple of cables. I mean, we can do it another way, but I've got the gear to do it properly with proper microphones. So I'll run around first thing this morning, try and find some XLR cables, and hopefully we'll be good to go. But yes, I'll keep you posted throughout the day, and we'll see how we get along.
What have I forgotten? Ear candy crate. Just pop a sheet underneath it just to protect my back seat a bit. Complete with my Kylie Minogue record, which, Kylie's getting a bit squashed. You'll be alright, Kylie. It's just 3.5 hours of being a bit squished. So, the time is, it's 11:10, and I'm aiming to be on the road by 1 o'clock, but I still need to sort out a few other things. I want to get video editing stuff sorted out, a couple of things in the house. I need to check through my list and make sure I've not forgotten anything. I'm in the workshop at the minute. I think I've got everything. If I haven't, it's too late now. I think what I'd also quite like to do before I set off is I'm going to dump all the footage off my GoPro that I've already filmed, because I filmed all me setup, and I might as well dump the footage that I'm recording at the minute onto the computer, and then I'm kind of starting with fresh, clean memory cards for the whole trip. I think that might be a good idea. And I need to check my list.
Okay, well, that's me all loaded up. Yeah. Just about ready to go. Next stop. Oh no, next stop won't be Birmingham. I'll stop along the way, but on my way to Maker Central. Woo!
Oh my god, I just literally left the iron on, couldn't make it up. I was in the middle of ironing a shirt, and then I got distracted by something, probably filming something. And luckily I hadn't left the house yet, so I have ironed my shirt now. And one other thing I haven't quite done yet is download some podcasts for the journey. I've got 3.5 hours of sitting in the truck, so it's perfect time for catching up on a few of my favourite podcasts. Let's have a look at new releases. Let's see. What's in Jupiter's Great Red Spot? Daniel and Jorge Explain the Universe. Awesome podcast. Download that. Fools with Tools. We've got to download a Fools with Tools episode. We've got episode 83, Hindsight's a Dire Wolf. Let's download that one. Let's go for a 99% Invisible from Bombay with Love. I'll have that. Unforeseen Underpants Gnomes. Right, I've currently got my GoPro copying off loads of stuff onto my computer. I haven't set off quite yet. But it's coming up, it's like 12 o'clock. I haven't got time to do any video editing. I was wanting to get a bit of editing done before leaving, but that's not going to happen. But I'll tell you what I am going to do. Our poor lawns, the grass is like a foot tall, so I'm going to cut the grass before going. If I'm now late, because I'm cutting the grass, and I do apologise, Peter.
So about halfway there, I'll stop just to give me and the van a bit of a breather. Still about an hour, 50 minutes or so to go, so I don't want to hang around for too long, but just need a bit of a leg stretch, because I haven't done a journey of this sort of length for a while either. So we'll give ourselves 10 minutes, me and the motor, and then we'll get back to it.
Oh, it's getting a bit boring now. I've been driving for about 3 hours now. According to the sat-nav, I've got 28 minutes and I'll be at the Travel Lodge in Birmingham. I should get there about 5:10. It's one of those kind of sunny afternoons where the road's all wet from all the rain, and you look in the rear view mirror and all you can see is a really, really dark sky behind you. But ahead it's all clear blue skies and it's lovely. So I don't know what time Peter's arriving. I don't know if we're going to meet at the Travel Lodge or at the NEC at the minute. Oh, and here's me driving down, listening to the Fools with Tools podcast, and Al gave me a shout out. Thanks for that, Al. It brought a little tear to my eye. It was totally took me by surprise. And it was lovely. So thanks for that, Al. And thank you, guys. Fools with Tools podcast. Awesome podcast. If you don't listen to it already, get yourself subscribed to it. Brilliant podcast. But it was a bit of a surreal moment, because I was listening to the show thinking to myself, we haven't given Fools with Tools a shout out on our podcast for a little while. We should probably give them a shout out. I think we gave them one when we first started the show. Come on, are you going to pull out? What are you doing? Oh, don't know. But it's always good to promote local stuff that is good. And Fools with Tools podcast is one of those things. I'm saying local, it's pretty international. Brett's from across a pond. So anyway, as I say, I was just sitting there, driving away, listening to the show, and then literally, as if by magic, Al just popped up saying, I'm going to give a shout out to Andy Mac. And at first I was like, he must be talking about a different Andy Mac. That's like, it's too surreal for that shout out to happen. It all started to get a little bit kind of existential. Now, what if he's currently recording a podcast talking about the Measuring Up podcast? That would be weird. Oh, and I ate a Yorkie bar while driving, and I've just discovered that my black jeans are covered in melted chocolate. So that's a brilliant way to meet Peter for the first time. Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you face to face, finally. My jeans are covered in what looks like, well, anyway.
So we have arrived at our destination, apparently. Well, yes, we have. No sign of the Andy Mac wagon yet. So I guess he's on his way. I know he's on his way, but I don't think he's here. So anyway, I'm going to go and get myself sorted. Whoops, sorry, camera, what's that? Yeah, so an eventful journey. I had to come through, I came off the motorway after I'd stopped. Because of roadworks and traffic and congestion and stuff, and came through Kenilworth, which is where my grandmother was born, curiously enough. Right, I'm done. I'm going to check in.
Oh, right. According to the sat-nav, I'm 7 minutes away from my Travelodge. But, because of the dodgy traffic, it's now 5:05, and it reckons I won't get there until 11 minutes past 5. I think that'll give us enough time to check in and then get to the NEC for 6 o'clock. I think.
Yeah, they weren't kidding when they said it was an airport hotel, did they? Okay, so I'm here. 5 o'clock, pretty much bang on the money. We'll see when Andy Mac arrives, and then we can get ourselves out to our time slot for unloading.
Literally, the Travelodge, it's I can almost touch it. It's like 20 foot away from us, but I'm on the other side of the carriageway, so somewhere up here, it's got to be a right turn. It's got to be this. This is it.
So I think that might be our man Andy just arriving. I'm going to nip downstairs and see if I can catch him as he's getting out of the van, out of the truck. Okay, lift's not working, or lift's way up high. I'm going to run down the stairs.
Ah, here we go. Here's a short stay car park. Up to, yes, this is the one. Up to 3 hours. How much? Hotel short stay. Yep. Ticket, please. I can see a white van that I can only assume is Peter's van. I don't want to block him in. I'll park a bit further up here. That's Peter's van, I can see it. Sort out what stuff I'm going to bring into the hotel. Leave that there. My poor phone's red hot. I think what I'll do, I'll get checked in and then I'll go and find Peter. Scratcher, I can see him. I can see Peter. Hold on. Oh.
There he is. It's a car park. You can't leave commercial vehicles in it.
Hiya, Peter.
How you doing? All right.
Nice to get you. Got to give you a hug. Got to give you a hug.
Good to see you.
How's it going?
All right, thank you. You know, we're finally here.
Hey!
We finally met. Yay. Welcome back to the Measuring Up podcast, the UK's first, and we like to think favourite commercial joinery podcast. I'm Peter Millard, and as well as running a virtual 10-minute workshop for YouTube, I run a small but far from perfectly formed carpentry and cabinet making workshop in the no man's land of West London.
And I'm Andy MacLellan, and I run a cabinet making and joinery business and woodworking thing up in Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. And every couple of weeks we get together to chat about all things commercial joinery related and woodworking, and all about trying to make some money out of woodworking in the UK. How are you, Peter?
I need to go into hospital for a new throat. we sound a little more hoarse than usual this week because we're recording this. In fact, the whole acoustics are probably a little bit different this week because we're recording this on the road, as it were, from the Makers Central event.
We are live from Travelodge Birmingham Airport.
So if you hear a swooshing sound, they said it was near the airport, and we didn't realise they meant it was on the runway. We are very, very close indeed to the airport, and yes, it's it's convenient for the airport. Certainly, you can't argue with that.
Peter, that picture you sent, or you showed us, of a plane taking off that looked like it was taking off in your bedroom.
Yeah,
was just insane.
You think it was a picture on your wall, but actually, no, that is the view from my window. But all good stuff. Makers Central. What an event! What a day!
Wow,
it's been quite a week, one thing and another. But Makers Central Day. Today was the first full day at Makers Central. Makers Central, of course, the huge maker event in the NEC in Birmingham, and it was our first day of our stand that the podcast has, the Measuring Up podcast stand at the event, and we've been promoting this a little bit, suggesting that anybody who's at the event comes along and says hi, and I think everybody didn't they?
Literally everybody. It was a crazy day, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was
absolutely
just,
fantastic.
What awesome people. Thank you, everyone who came out to see us.
Absolutely. It was non-stop. Literally, we arrived at about 9 o'clock this morning, just after. The doors opened at 10. I managed a very quick walk around with my phone, and I did do a live stream, but nobody has watched it, so I'm not convinced that that's actually gone out. But and after that, I neither sat down nor veered past the front of our little 3x3 metre enclosure all day long. We've had a steady stream of people and well-wishers coming up to shake our hands and telling us how much they enjoyed the podcast and indeed the respective YouTube channels.
Literally from 9 o'clock this morning, when we arrived to set up, to 6:15 in the evening, when we finally kind of got out. Yeah, absolutely amazing, and people kept on coming over and offering us cups of coffee and drinks, and which was very much appreciated.
Welcome. Yeah, we really appreciated that.
So it's one of those kind of slightly awkward things where if someone's been queuing for, and I can kind of understand now why, like Jimmy DeResta and Bob Claggett and stuff were in the situation they are always in at these sort of shows where you can't really leave. If someone's been queuing, especially with those guys where they're getting really, really big queues, and you can't really move anywhere. If someone's been queuing for 45 minutes or an hour to talk to you, you can't just wait till someone gets to the front of the queue and say, right, I'm off to the
bathroom, off to the bar, to get a cup of coffee or whatever else. So
gonna go and get some lunch, just wait here for another hour and I'll be back. So, and we kind of got our first appreciation of that, and it makes a lot more sense now why, it obviously wouldn't be fair if people have been queuing for a while to chat to us, and it wouldn't really be fair for us to just walk off and...
we thought we might have been able to find a bit of time to sort of tag team. One of us goes to get a bite to eat or a cup of coffee, but actually we just had a queue for each of us all day long. I don't think there was a single moment when there wasn't somebody stood in front of our stand waiting to talk to us.
I didn't even get a chance to open my packet of Tunnock's tea cakes. That was our lunch, basically.
You had Tunnock's tea cakes?
They've been sitting on the stand, and I didn't get a chance. Someone brought over I think it was Matt, brought over a full packet of biscuits for her. That didn't get opened. Did you manage to open any?
No,
snacks?
I had a pack of apples and I had a bottle of water. I think I drank some water during the day, but other than that, I haven't eaten anything. I've been to the loo. All I've done, as you can probably hear from slightly croaky voices, is talk. I don't think I've spoken so much or shaken so many hands today as I ever had. In fact, I don't think I've been on my feet for this long before, ever since I was a Saturday lad in a camera shop. It's brutal that our age. It's
standing still for a long time.
It is absolutely exhausting.
Really
and the worst part is you stand still for all this time, and then you have to walk a couple of miles to get back to the car, back to the truck. Yeah, that was hard. But yeah, what a day.
Amazing.
It is a fantastic event. This is the first one that I've been to. Andy, you were there last year. I know I got the dates wrong. And it is an absolutely brilliant event. Just something for everyone. Well, I quipped as a bit of a joke, but actually it's quite serious. I've never seen so many wives and girlfriends walking around a show like this, smiling, not being dragged around, being happy to be there. Yeah. Because there's something for everybody.
And kids as well.
Good. Much more child-friendly events and things for kids this year.
And a few young teenagers as well, like real aspiring woodworkers who we are absolutely relying on to kind of pick up the gauntlet and, like, you know, just to keep the crafts running, because there's so many people just aren't into that these days. And it's so lovely to see younger folk getting into making stuff and to be doing all this craft-related stuff, and just incredible work that these people are doing as well.
It's absolutely
very humbling.
Fantastic.
Very humbling seeing some of the projects that people have been doing, and just hearing about a lot of people who are getting into woodwork, and hopefully we've helped a little bit along the way of chatting about our various stories and just kind of life behind the wheel of. And we got chatting today with some really experienced, way beyond, you know, people doing stunning staircase work and all
proper
that sort of
real craftsmen today.
Yeah.
And, you know, they come in to talk to us.
Yes.
Just because we happen to put a few videos out on YouTube. It's as you say, it's a humbling experience.
It is. And it kind of makes it feel like it's all worthwhile.
Yeah, I know we go on sometimes about the trolly sort of comments that we get and the silly comments. But really, an event like this just makes it all worthwhile.
It does. It absolutely does. So thank you to each and every person for coming out. If you couldn't make it at the moment, we don't know whether or not there's going to be another one. We'll be heading over to the Hilton Bar tonight, and we'll be keeping an ear to the ground.
In the interests of research, you understand. Yeah. That's where all the cool kids hang out. So we thought we'd go and sort of lower the tone a little bit.
Yes, so we'll head over there and like try and have a bit of a chat and see if we can get any updates on. It's probably too early to tell whether or not they'll be doing another show next year.
The general feeling seemed to be that the ticket sales were particularly good this year, and that it might be on for another year next year, which would be fantastic.
Yeah,
it was quite an event.
And there was people from not just the UK, from
all over,
from France, from Denmark, Norway, Poland.
Yep.
Where else? Any I've missed out? Obviously, America.
Yes, a few Americans there. Just a real
island,
broad range island. Yeah, north and south. Well, just a fantastic spread of events and people attending. Just really terrific.
Now, we can't really tell you what Maker Central was like because we literally haven't seen any of it other than our stand. We can tell you what our stand's like.
Yeah, our stand's fantastic. It looks exactly like the picture on it and photos on Instagram and the videos. But the rest of the event, as I said, we both had a very quick walk around first thing this morning before everything opened. But once things were happening, we literally didn't leave the stand. So, kind of tricky for us to say, but from the impression we had, it looked really good.
Yeah. From our perspective, Maker Central is basically a 3x3x3 white cube.
Yeah.
With a few of our logos on.
Beautifully appointed white cube. Beautifully appointed. With some fine looking tables and logos. Yeah.
Oh, and the most stunning bandsaw cut signs. Jimmy DeResta would be proud.
He would.
In fact, we need to find Jimmy at some point and get him to just come and
autograph them. Or spray his logo on them.
Well, he's not doing that. You know how long that took? You can spray it on the back. But we haven't had a chance to catch up with any of the big names yet because they've all had giant queues all day. So we'll head over to Hilton later on and
see if we can find
if we can catch up with people before they go to bed. It depends how knackered everyone is.
Before we crash completely.
So, did you meet anyone particularly interesting today?
There were a few people actually, and we actually met somebody who just to go into a little bit of follow-up. We met somebody who had emailed the show discussing the woodworking education, and it was an interesting story. And you've paraphrased this, Andy, in the show notes, haven't you?
Yeah, this was a really interesting one, and we always say the last show is the last show that we'll ever talk about apprentices, but we'll talk about it again today because it is quite interesting. As everyone's aware, we've had lots of different views on apprenticeships and time-served nature of things and qualifications, and the thing that generally comes across that we've been told by quite a few people is that in order to become qualified as a joiner, you have to complete an apprenticeship, and you can't get your NVQ or whatever until you've completed your apprenticeship. But Adam was basically saying that he retrained later on in life and was taking his City and Guilds Advanced Carpentry and Joinery qualification and can now consider himself as a qualified and obsessed joiner. And interestingly, his son has also taken a Level 2 City and Guilds Carpentry and Joinery qualification, and his was supposed to be an apprenticeship with 1 day a week in college, 4 days a week in an apprentice position with a local firm. But somehow between the college and everything else, it failed to organise the apprenticeship, and the college just let him do the whole course in a single year with no apprenticeship, and he was given the full qualification at the end of it. And we've heard this on more than one occasion of people saying, well, I'm qualified and I've never done an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And it kind of, and Adam did it as part of a college course that he paid for and qualified in 9 weeks, but spread over 6 months, but again with no apprenticeship. But he's now qualified, and I think that's Level 1, but he can go on and do the Level 2 if he wants, but there's no apprenticeship as part of it in any way, shape or form.
Yeah. What was very interesting when we were chatting to Adam in the show today as well is that he said he did this course at a university in a well thought of technical college, and the range of students there were from all over the world. There were Australians and other Europeans and Americans, and he raised a very interesting point about how carpenters, cabinet makers, joiners are regarded in other parts of the world, and particularly in the US. Somebody with these sort of qualifications can really make good money in the US because a lot of their houses are timber framed, so there's presumably a lot more of that sort of work available to them. But it brought up the difference, I think, between sort of how carpenters and joiners are regarded here in the UK compared to a highly skilled trade in, for example, the US.
Yeah, and we hear about this a lot where tradesmen in general are, and not just in the US, Germany and other parts of Europe, where tradespeople are genuinely regarded very, quite highly in society and respected and not kind of looked down on, and the sort of attitude that you do typically get in the UK, sadly. And now things are starting to turn a corner, I think, and I think a lot of that is because a lot of the smaller players have probably, the ones who have been maybe not charging enough and haven't really thought out the business side of things enough. And there seems to be a lot of people who are now, really charging a fair rate for what they're doing and doing stunning, beautiful work. And we need to see more of that, because we need to see more of the standards being raised and the prices being raised to match. Because there's too many people, certainly in the past, there's been far too many people going out and just charging pennies for what is a really highly skilled and should be highly regarded occupation.
Yeah, And highly paid as well. What was really, really interesting today in talking to a few people, I had a few guys, I think literally 3 or 4, who came to me who said they were currently working for somebody else, but they were going out on their own, later on in the year. And did I have any advice for them? And the principal one was, don't undersell yourself.
Yeah.
There is a skills shortage.
If the country as a whole has been waiting for a moment when you can put your rates up, now is that moment.
Now is it. Yeah, absolutely.
These sort of moments don't come across that often, and if there should be no reason. Obviously there's pockets of the country but you just need to target your business to where the money is and where the shortage of work is, and there's never been a better time to try and get the rates of pay back to a reasonable level. And one of the things that I've been kind of talking about offline is saying, and this is kind of a slightly arbitrary number, but I don't think anyone should be charging under £30 an hour. Generally speaking, if you're self-employed, that should be your entry bare minimum, even if you're doing painting and decorating, in my view.
Yeah, handyman work.
Yeah. And if you're doing anything that can be vaguely described as a skilled job, and certainly painting and decorating comes into that, certainly handyman work comes into that, all the regular trades obviously come into that. But you still hear the odd report of people saying that they're charging £10 or £15 an hour and making a comfortable living. And I
just don't believe that.
No, I don't either. And I've put the question out there on YouTube to everyone, just as part of a YouTube poll, and the vast majority were charging over £30 an hour, but there was still a reasonable, I haven't checked the stats recently, but there was a reasonable proportion charging under £15 an hour. And the question on my little poll on YouTube was worded, if you view yourself as running a successful business, what hourly rate do you charge? And I broke it down into various categories. So if you view your business as successful and you're self-employed, what hourly rate are you charging? And there was a reasonable proportion of people thinking that they're successful but charging under £15 an hour.
Yeah.
And I put a note on that saying, if you are charging under £15 an hour, I'm not saying that you're lying, but please could you send me a copy of your accounts? And you can completely anonymize them in any way, shape or form that you want.
Yeah.
Take your name out of it, take your company name out. All I want to see is the numbers and nothing else. Because if you're charging under £15 an hour and you run your own business, and I'm not talking about being a subcontractor, I'm not talking about anything where you're on a long-term contract, that's different. But I'm talking about if you're from week to week working for different clients. I just don't understand how you can make those numbers work if you're charging less than £15 an hour.
Yeah.
And I've run through the numbers in my little hourly rate spreadsheet and run so many different scenarios. And if you're taking into account everything that you need to take into account, you can't be making any more than minimum wage. And in fact, you're probably making significantly less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
But an interesting one, but it's always good to hear back from people on this subject. One of the things that Adam did say was that one of his modules was to build a stud wall as per a technical drawing. So this was at college. The only teaching and preparation that he had was to be given a drawing, which was a poor photocopy, with a couple of measurements on. And he was allowed 10 minutes to ask any questions, and then just had to get on with it for the very first time in his life. And at the end of it, he handed it over for assessment, and it was graded. So there was no teaching involved at all. You were given a bad photocopy and just said, build a stud wall.
And the worst part is, if you don't know how to do it, then you also don't know what questions to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was one of the major points that came across. How do you know what to ask if you've never done it before?
If you've never done it,
you've never even attempted it before. So there's more and more becoming apparent, I think. We're still learning about how all this works.
Yeah.
But I think it's becoming more and more apparent that something desperately needs to be done. And now seems like a really good time to do it while the market's fairly buoyant.
Yeah.
But not 100% what the answer is yet.
No, indeed. But as we said, the reason that the market is fairly buoyant at the moment is that there is a skills shortage. And as we mentioned, I think in the last podcast, because of the crazy stamp duties that we are required to pay here in the UK, people are choosing to stay and fix up rather than move on and buy another property.
Yeah.
So there is lots of work around there.
And a huge amount of new build properties being built, and carpenters working for big developers can get paid really good money now. So why even bother running your own business, you know?
Yeah.
And this is why the market is in the state it's in at the minute. And hopefully it will set a precedent for people charging a much more fair rate for the sort of work that they're doing. But we love hearing about it because we want a really broad cross-section. This is probably the only opportunity there has ever been to discuss this sort of stuff in the UK before, I would guess. Maybe there's been online surveys and stuff like that, but certainly I very much doubt a podcast has talked about this before in the UK.
There may be good reasons for that.
Yes.
Yes.
What do you think as a professional, if you are running a professional joinery business in the UK or woodworking of any description, what do you think needs to be done to improve things from where they are at the minute? Or maybe you think everything's absolutely fine at the minute. Who else have we heard from?
We heard from Kyle when talking about new build houses. Kyle says that the estate that he lives in was built during the 1970s. He says, in fact, our cul-de-sac used to be on the edge of the estate with views over the valleys, but a few years later, the estate was extended, and now we're right in the centre. That happens so frequently, actually, in all types of developments. You get a property with a lovely view, and then suddenly phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 5 of the building has come through, and suddenly you're looking into somebody else's kitchen window.
I've got a story about that in a bit, but go on.
Yeah, okay. Carl says, although our house is detached, you wouldn't know it. We can hear our neighbours vacuuming, and that's with a 2 millimetre exclamation mark gap in between. 2 metre gap in between 2 millimetres. That'd be tight, wouldn't it? Having been in some more modern houses, he sees that the quality really hasn't improved. They had the house extended 15 years ago, and the quality of the build is worse than the job that the original builders did. So, not a great story. Kyle says that the newest house that he'd consider buying would be 1960s, because that's when houses started getting smaller and started looking like a copy and paste job. Although he does say, having said that, I'd much rather just build my own house. But as we say, planning is an absolute nightmare.
I'm in a new build, as you know.
Yeah.
And I've never noticed a problem with noise between properties, but I'm wondering if he's maybe in a timber-framed house or something.
Gosh,
because at the end of the day, if it's brick and block, and especially if it's brick and block and dot and dab, technically it should be more soundproof than older properties, because older properties often don't even have a cavity.
No.
So normally it's just 2 layers of brick and that's it. So although the bricks are often a lot denser, but even so, if you've got brick, then a cavity, then block, then a cavity, and then your plasterboard, you wouldn't expect it to be that non-soundproof. But as I say, timber-framed houses very, very possibly, because then it is literally, presumably OSB and then brick.
Built in the 1970s? Would they have timber-framed houses in the 1970s?
I'm not sure. I've seen Barrett doing timber-framed houses around where we are, but I'm not sure in the 70s if it would be timber-framed back then or not. Interesting. But there's a bunch of, where we are, they've released various plots for self-build plots.
Oh, right.
As part of the giant housing estate that I live on.
Uh-huh.
And they've released like a handful of plots, and they're crazy expensive. Like, I'm pretty sure that's like 200, 250 just for the plot.
Just for the plot.
And then you've got the build on top of that. So you're talking easily 500,000 plus houses, which in the northeast, that's quite
a lot of money, yeah.
And everyone's done their little self-build. I'm saying little, they're substantial houses. You
would have to say for a plot for a 200,000.
Yeah, but so these are like huge, beautiful. Every single one's different because they're all individually designed and everything.
Yeah.
But each house is like a metre away from the next house. There's like giant house, 1 metre gap. Giant house, 1 metre gap. And it's just, if I was going to do a self-build and put all that effort into building a house from scratch,
I'd want a bit more space around it, wouldn't you?
Nothing against people living in these houses. I'm sure they're beautiful houses. But I think it's just criminal that the plots are so small.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably there's an element of this being self-inflicted because they've probably made the houses as big as it can possibly make the houses.
You could make the house smaller and give yourself more space around it, but
I think if I was going to have a 500,000 self-build, I would want it to be more than a metre away from the next house. Right. But maybe there's planning restrictions on the footprint of the house. Maybe they have to be built that way. I know that they are quite strict on certain things to do with the builds. But separate to that, I'm always on the lookout for properties out in the countryside and stuff. Not that it would ever be practical at the minute with young kids and stuff. They need to be able to get to school. But my wife found a property and it just looked perfect. You know, it wasn't too far away. It was out in the sticks a little bit, but, you know, fields all around it.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of land. It had its own paddock.
Of course it would, yeah.
Yeah. It had its own, like, stables and outbuildings. Basically purpose-built workshop.
Right.
And, you know, not quite a Jimmy DeResta size shop, but for the UK, a big shop, you know, kind of, think Mike Farrington size.
Right, yeah, got it.
2,500, 3,000 square foot or something. 10 times the size of what we've got at the minute.
Exactly.
And it was, one of these properties was on for like, with all this land, detached house, outbuildings, giant fields, in the middle of the countryside. And it was on for like 350,000 or something.
Wow.
It was like, oh, that looks very interesting. Did a bit digging and whatnot. Oh, look, there's a planning application in. Every square inch of land around that house is going to have a giant housing estate built on. They're desperate to sell it. I'll be surprised if they'll be able to sell it. Every single bit of greenery around their house is going to have new builds everywhere. So suddenly the appeal of living out in the countryside, if you did want that, I mean, it would still be quite tempting, but it does put a dampener on things a little bit.
It does.
What have you been working on, job-wise?
What a week. We might have a little bit more of this in the after show, but yes, I'm still not clear of these flaming bedside tables which have been hanging around the workshop since the last podcast and probably the one before as well. Hopefully by the time you hear this, I'll be done with. But it's been a bit of a difficult week in that regard. I finished the tables, the paint finally dried, and they got a good enough finish on them. And they looked great. I would have posted a couple of little bits and pieces up on Instagram. I'm 10-minute workshop on Instagram, and Andy, your
Gosforth Handyman,
or indeed at Measuring Up podcast on Instagram. Yes. We use Instagram a lot for these little photos and short video snippets and things. I put a couple of little bits of video up on Instagram, and you can take a look and see them there. But they looked really nice. It was, you know, the paint's been problematic, but the finish is lovely. I fitted the little sort of slipper cup feet onto them, and I wrapped them up ready, you know, lots of bubble wrap and all stuff to protect everything. And I told the design associate that I've been working with at the designers that they were all finished, and can you send us a picture? Yeah, okay. Unwrapped it, you know, took a picture, sent it off to them. Long pause, more than a day's pause. We're not sure about the feet. We might need to change them. They look a bit chunky.
And describe these feet. What are they? Metal feet?
They're metal slipper cups. So it's like a little a little flower pot. If you imagine a square-sided flower pot, only tiny, so curved, slightly flared towards the top, and the foot just sits in it.
Does it screw in or anything? Or literally just rest in?
A couple of screws underneath it just to secure it. And these are fairly, they're not fine castings. The inside is pretty crude. They're not particularly square or level. So they're not trivial to fit. But, I got it done. That's fine. They don't like them. Too heavy looking. Okay.
By not level, do you mean each foot isn't necessarily the same height as each other? Or
yeah, the insides of the castings have little burrs and things on them, so you've got to scrape all those out. So they're not
right. But you don't have to adjust the height of each leg.
I'm not touching that.
Yeah, I was going to say
no, because they were designed to be absolutely flat and level, and it's taken it's not a trivial thing to do. Yeah. It's not a difficult thing to do, but it's not trivial to get all four legs nice and flat and square.
Yeah.
Anyway, fine, you're going to change them. Lots of back and forth about they were having trouble, having changed their minds on these feet. They're having trouble to find ones that fit. Long story short, they think they found them. Will this work? They keep sending me technical drawings, and I keep looking at the drawings and saying, well, we don't know because we can't see from the drawing that there's internal and external dimensions, but you can't see if that's the top dimension or the bottom dimension because the foot flares.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, look, why don't you just buy one and send it to me, and I'll tell you if it'll fit or not. And this, whatever. Anyway, eventually they buy a foot and send it, and it arrived just before I left. Actually, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Anyway, but on this was last Wednesday. I got an email late in the day, 5:30. To say, oh yeah, about the feet, blah blah blah. We've bought a foot, and we're sending it to you. It should be with you soon. Oh, and by the way, designer and client have decided they don't like the blue paint, and we need it painted in Thorn Ball, one of the many shades of off-white.
No.
So I looked at that and thought, you know what, I'm not going to answer that right now. I'm going to sleep on this for a while.
So this is this linseed oil
This is this linseed oil-based paint. And
which has already been a total
which has always been a bit of
buy.
a headache. And they want it changed to, I can't remember what it was, one of the Farron Ball.
So they're moving off the
linseed oil paint. Now, I don't know if you can overpaint linseed oil paint or not, because it's the whole idea of it is it stays, soft and tacky and stays, it levels out really well.
If anyone has painted over linseed oil.
I asked a few people on the Twitter group that I know, a couple of professional painters and decorators, one of whom chipped in to the Measuring Up podcast thread, Measuring Up PC on Twitter, after our discussion about linseed oil paint last time. So I asked him, and he put the word out to anybody he knows, and the results were almost completely balanced. Half the people said no, never in a million years. Half the people said, well, it should be okay if you thoroughly rub it down and use difficult surfaces and a decent primer.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next day, having processed this information, I looked at this and thought, I don't really want to do this. They've asked me to, and they've said they understand it'll involve additional payments and the rest of it. And I replied to the design associate that I'm working with, who I've been working with all the way through this thing. And these have been going on for a long, long time, these tables now, with the problems with the paint. And I said, hi, yeah, about the feet, yeah, whatever. About the paint, oh, wow, really? Exclamation mark. Meaning, talking plainly, one worker to another, slightly overworked and underpaid and oppressed in many ways. And I knew that they were under a certain amount of time pressure on this. So I said, look, really sorry to hear you don't like the paint. I'm because this has been taking so long with the paint problems and the design problems. This is the people who sent me the wrong plans for a week. Don't forget. Yeah. Because of that, I'm actually going away on Friday for a long weekend. And here we are. And then when I come back, I'm going away for another week because I'm doing my son's bathroom, as it happens. But I didn't mention that. But it's I've got commitments. So the earliest I would be able to take a look at this would be the very end of the month. So I'm not back until the 27th, 28th of the month. And I just said, I know there's a certain amount of time pressure on this. If you need it doing sooner than that, can I suggest you check it out too? And they use one of two spray painting, the guys who do the high gloss spraying. And I just shut that off. I've always spoken plainly with them and been straight with them, and thought no more of it. About 10 minutes later, I get an email from the big boss designer saying, very formal, "Dear Peter, blah, 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 part of our role is to adapt ourselves to client changes." Even so, I was shocked at the tone you took with Design Associate. I thought, whoa.
You were just having...
I was speaking plainly, as you would to a co-worker, as I would to you, if you were on the design side of things. As I would... I've worked with these guys for 5 years. I've seen this... Not a girl, young
If they
woman.
were the end customer, then that would be a bit... You'd have to be a bit more
democratic. So anyway, the upshot of this is, it was I won't ask you to work on this project again, and I'll make sure that you're not troubled with work for this client anymore.
Bit harsh.
I thought that was, so I said, well, I wrote back straight away. I said, sorry, designer name. You got the wrong end of the stick on this. All I was trying to do was explain, in plain terms, that because of the initial delays, and it's the whole job's been backed up to a point where I have other commitments now, and I can't drop those just to repaint this. And I think because you've been on a schedule on this, I was just saying that if you needed it dealt with sooner rather than later, then it's probably best to give it to one of your other paint guys rather than have me try and do it. And I've heard nothing since then.
It's probably for the best.
So probably for the best. Anyway, I've since had a note from Design Associate to say that the foot was on its way. So I shot her a quick note to say, I'm very sorry if you were at all offended, but I was just speaking plainly one worker to another. And I got a message back to say, no, it's absolutely fine. I'm not bothered at all by it. So somebody's got their wires crossed somewhere.
Maybe someone was just having a bad day.
Maybe, but it's ended on a bit of a sour note. So it could be that the work from that source is going to dry up. I don't know. Anyway, the foot arrived and it's a nightmare. The legs are 36 mil square. The inside of this cup foot is 32 mil, so you'd have to cut a millimetre off each side to get the foot to fit. Oh, best part, the foot then tapers from 32 mil down to 20 mil in the space of about 25 mil. So it's a really sharp, tapered angle on that.
Could you do it all at 20 mil, or would you see the gap at the top? I don't know.
Well, the other thing is that, again, it's a really rough casting on the inside.
Right. So it's
I
not
don't think
flat.
they're going to be the same. I think they're going to have to be each one hand-tailored individually.
Would the glue in?
That's a thought, actually. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. The thing is, it's already, no, they can't glue in because they're going to have to be taken off to be painted.
Oh, of course, yeah. And
so,
for when they change their minds again.
Possibly, yeah. So it's a bit of a headache. I haven't quite decided how to handle that one. I think what I'll do, I've still got some of the basic sticks that I use for the legs. I'll try... I'll do a mock-up on one and see how long it takes, because it's not a straightforward swap. There's a lot more work involved. Eight legs, all of which have been painted. Not that the paintwork matters much, but you don't want to mess it up.
I was going to say you could do it on the chop saw, but not if it's assembled.
It's assembled.
If it wasn't assembled, you could do the cuts straight down on the chop saw, just at the angle, and just keep rotating the leg. You can't do that once it's built.
Nope. It's
not easily.
Chisel.
No,
chisel
you
job.
do, but just everything would get in the road.
No, it's got to be done by hand. There's no other way to do it. I mean, if with some jigs, you might be able to get away with
for it. Maybe
can't get the router in there.
How big are they? Could you get
the legs themselves? There's a bottom shelf, so the stub of leg is only 150
I didn't know
mil.
there was a bottom shelf.
Yeah. So
if it was open,
if it was open,
able to get a router in at an angle with a jig to hold the leg at
an angle. I think it might be a jig and a multi-master might be the The only way to...
Oh, my.
Which is a ridiculous thing to do.
That's crazy.
So, I don't know. I'm going to have to explain, look, it's possible to do this, but this one has taken me an hour, and you've got 8 to do, so that's another day's work.
Yeah. And why is this? Just because they don't like the legs that
they don't like the legs they originally picked. And, shock horror, they're struggling to find ones that might fit.
With all this in mind and the change of colour, would it not be easier to just start again and charge them for new tables?
Probably, but they're not going to pay that.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, so a bit of a nightmare on that front. So, it put a bit of a dampener on my week because obviously I've been getting ready for Maker Central. And I'm all excited about doing Maker coin swaps and all that sort of stuff, and get me stickers printed and all the other bits and bobs. But, whatever. We're here.
You did get your coins made.
I did get my coins made. I had a lovely branding iron made. I've never done that sort of stuff before. So
where did you get the branding iron?
From a guy on Instagram.
Right.
I could give him a plug if I could find his name. Really nice branding iron. Great quality. Does it on a CNC, which is really interesting. Quite good fun to do. Got a blowtorch going and warmed it up.
It's amazing how much warming up they take.
They do, and how well they hold their heat.
Yeah.
40 mil across.
40, I think that's about the size of mine. Trying to visualise it. Yeah, it's probably about 40. I've got a smaller one, which I rarely use, and I've got 2 40 ones, one for the business and one for the YouTube. So all of my customer work gets my business branding stuff, and anything that's a YouTube project gets a YouTube branding one. And but they take a lot of heating up. Yeah. Did you get a handle with yours?
Yeah.
Right. I didn't get a handle with mine. It just came with a little 5 mil threaded rod.
Oh, right.
And I ended up making a handle. And but the only do you know what size thread it is into the actual piece? Or
I think it's 6 mil.
Right.
But I'm not,
because mine's 5 mil and it feels a little bit flimsy. I could potentially drill it out and re-tap it, but I'd be really nervous about accidentally popping out the other side.
Yes, that's one thing you don't want to do. Isn't it?
Yeah. So, but it does the job. It's just sometimes it's difficult to get enough pressure on it to get a nice even brand.
That's the tricky bit, because Michael, who made mine, gave me some very good advice about it, because I don't have one. I didn't know which way to go with whether you go for just a line sort of drawing or with a properly dense, filled-in pie shape.
Right.
If you understand my logo. And line drawing worked really well, so I'm really pleased for it.
Well, I'm amazed. On mine, there's bits of the letters, like, for example, like in Gosforth Handyman, the O's. And the O's have to have a tiny, tiny slither brass strip for the centre of the O. And you look at it and it's like, A, how do they make that without that little bit of brass just falling off? And B, I mean, I've done hundreds of brands with it now. And it's fine.
It's fine.
And it's like, you're looking at this sliver of brass. It must be well under 1/4 millimetre. I mean, it looks like 1/10 of a millimetre wide. You see how wide this little sliver of brass is? And about 2 millimetres high. Literally, imagine if you look at my logo and you see the centre of a letter O, it's a very, very thin little strip. And it's like, how do you make that? I don't understand how you even get bits that can cut that. One thing I've been thinking, because I hate my drill press, is putting it in the drill press and heating it up while it's in the drill press, obviously not switching the drill press on, and using that just to get a really even
I tried that. Somebody had recommended that as a method, and I tried it, and I couldn't get a blowtorch under it enough to heat it up.
Yeah,
I tried doing it from the back, and it was taking too long to get any heat into it.
Right.
Without, all the bits underneath it starting to scorch. So,
and plus, if you're kind of firing the heat upwards, you might accidentally melt the chuck on or
the little plastic guard around it.
That's all snapped off, man.
All right, yeah.
But
it might melt what's remaining of it.
Good, it would save us a job. As as long as it still functions, that drill press, it will remain in my workshop.
Yeah.
And it's quite handy for drilling out Euro hinges, but other than that...
Yeah, that's what mine's dedicated to typically. I've got a video about that coming up.
The most useless drill. Yeah. Literally the worst purchase next to my GoPro. But fortunately, I don't have many bad purchases. Most stuff in my shop's pretty good. What is the worst thing you've ever bought?
Ooh. Gosh, I'd have to think about that, actually.
Is there anything that you've bought that just doesn't work?
Doesn't function properly? Probably something, but nothing so bad that it really sticks in my mind.
Doesn't really spring to mind.
Yeah.
I think the only thing for me is that drill press, I think.
And I've bought things that I know aren't very good.
Yeah, that's
because I bought them because they were cheap.
Yeah,
you know.
If it's 50 quid for a track saw,
exactly.
It's going to be a 50 quid track saw.
Exactly.
You know, so
best one in the world. I think I was going to say the table saw because it's pretty basic and hasn't got standard size slots. On the other hand, it wasn't particularly expensive, and I really hate the fence. But then I don't use it much.
Yeah,
it's a small cast iron topped saw with an induction motor.
Yeah,
and the dust collection's horrific on it. It's just almost non-existent. But it does the job. And it wasn't expensive, so I kind of knew what I was getting into with that.
I think when I got my drill press, I didn't even have a function for a drill. It was just one of those things that I thought, well, if you have a workshop, you've got to have a drill press. And almost everything in my shop I've bought because I've needed it for a job. And that's always been my kind of rule of thumb. No matter what it is, I'll happily buy anything as long as it's paid for in some way. Not necessarily outright, but certainly justifiable by a job. Very, very few things I've bought just because I think it would be nice to have. But that drill press was one of those things that I did buy without really thinking about it. And
was it a B&Q one by any chance?
No,
okay.
Screw fix,
okay.
Titan.
Because I did almost exactly the same thing. I bought a B&Q one because I happened to be in B&Q once, and it was there for 50 quid. So I'll buy it.
This was 100 quid. I thought it would be like better than it is.
Halfway decent, yeah.
The play on the chuck is unbelievable. I mean, as soon as it hits a slight deviation in the grain, the chuck wobbles. It's like, and it's all right on Euro hinges because you don't get those sort of problems with MDF.
With MDF, no.
If I had to do Euro hinges into a natural wood, I don't think I could do it accurately enough with that because there would be too much play on the chuck. It would follow the grain too much. I think. Plus, everything has broken on it. The handles that make it go up and down broke. The depth stop broke. The bed on it's a pain in the neck to adjust. When the depth stop wasn't broke, it's really awkward to actually set what the depth is because you've got to use two
little screws. That's the same as mine.
It's
so annoying.
I wonder if it's the same one. But no, this is a Titan job. But maybe it should have been 50 quid.
Maybe.
So
maybe.
Well, we're 52 minutes in.
How did that happen?
Goodness knows how much footage we've got from before we met each other.
Yeah.
But we have met each other.
We have met each other. And usually, yes, this is podcasting from the same room.
Yeah. Lots of people were absolutely bemused by the fact that we've managed to record 26 episodes of a podcast without actually meeting each other.
Whereas, that's kind of 21st century how things work, isn't it? I've got friends in inverted commas on Twitter and Instagram that I've never met.
Yeah.
The nature of recording podcasts is that it's actually, in many ways, better to do it in separate rooms. And it doesn't really matter where those rooms are.
Although I have to say, it's really nice not having a slight delay.
Yes, and it's nice to see you as well.
Yes,
by the way.
it's absolutely lovely to see you.
You're clearly sharp and in focus.
Yes,
and you're not lagging at all. Yes. and you're the right way up.
I'm the right way up.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yes,
a major improvement.
Yeah, I don't have to put myself into tablet mode.
No.
We'll keep it brief because we are knackered, and you can probably hear it in our voices.
From the voices are probably sounding a little bit gravelly.
Yeah, we are. We are very happy, but we are very tired, and our voices are broken. But we will join you all over on the after show.
Yep.
But before we do that, we've got our brand new Patreon shout-outs for all of our $3 plus Patreons, and it's now open to every $3 plus. There's no limit on who can join us, and we've got some random shout-outs.
So how did you randomise this? Because some of these names are very familiar from the previous shout-outs.
I'm just glancing at that. Okay, I'll tell you how I randomised it. I took all the names as an export from... Because I would appreciate... I wasn't entirely sure how to do this myself, but this seemed to work. I didn't export from Patreon, which exports everyone who supports us into a CSV file, which I imported into Excel, and then I could filter it by everyone who's on $3 plus. So now I've got a list of names of everyone supporting it at $3 plus. And then in Excel, there's a random number generator function. I can't remember if it's like equals rand brackets, whatever. Anyway, whatever it is, it generates a random number. So all you do is drag that number down all of the cells, and every cell gets a different random number.
Right.
And then you just sort it and pick your first 20.
Top 10? Top 10
so
per person?
Theoretically,
Fantastic. Okay.
So I've just sorted it ascending to descending. Sorted it highest to lowest, but it really makes no difference because everyone should theoretically have a different random number against them, and pick the top 20.
Right.
So I think that... But you're right, it does look like very familiar names.
It does.
But I think it's also because, obviously, the bulk of people who supported $3 plus were already having their names read out, if that makes sense. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for our wonderful Patreon supporters, but especially Dominic Kajinson, Brendan from the Shades Workshop, Chris Dryan, John T. Lynch, Michael Stringer, Mike Parsons, Untested Woodworker, Wilson Chan, Thistledew, Owen Bullock, and Wayne Gilbert.
And a massive thank you to Steve Avery, Randall Davis, Harry Capper, Jay Wong, Kevin Miller, Peter Tone, James's Man Cave, James Taylor, Mike Broom, and Andy Farmer. And where can we find you, Peter?
I am in bed nursing a sore throat. You can find me at 10minuteworkshop.tv over on YouTube. We'll take you 10minuteworkshop.tv. We'll take you straight there. At 10minute workshop on Instagram, or at 10minute shop on Twitter. How about you, Andy?
You can find me, Gosforth Handyman, on YouTube, Gosforth Handyman on Instagram, and Gosforth Andy on Twitter. And, of course, you can get in touch with the show, Measuring Up PC, on Twitter.
Or via email, contact@measuringuppodcast.com. If you have a minute, please rate us on iTunes. Ratings really help push us further up the stack, and further up the stack is where we want to be. And you can support the show, of course, at patreon.com/measuringuppodcast. And we'd like to thank everybody who does just that. And hopefully who'll be joining us in the after show as well.
Yes, if you come across to the after show now, which you can get via Patreon, we shall continue the conversation briefly because we've got very sore throats. But we'll do a quick Patreon one, a special Maker Central Patreon.
Yes.
And we'll join you over there. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much for listening. Just a quick shout out for the music for today's podcast is by Silver by Riot. So thank you very much for that.
Awesome. See you next time.
Ta-da.